Nick, we just saw the story on Sarajevo and the zoo, but there's a backstory there. What is it?
There is. I remember that day. We went to the zoo and it was sort of off the front lines, very, very close to the Serb front lines. And when we were in there, the Serbs must have seen us moving around because they started mortaring the place, and then there was heavy machine gun fire. So we sort of hunkered down inside. Then the guys who were with us said, okay, you're going to have to run across this little alleyway and get in that house over there that they pointed out. So it's when they said go, this heavy gunfire's going, and Margaret Moth, who was a camerawoman, and Christian and I all dashed across this sort of open ground, this alleyway, and then went inside a house. And when we got in there, the most amazing thing happened, because Bosnian television in those days used to run the stories that reporters like Christian were filing. We went into this house and the family were all sitting around watching their television, watching Christian on the television, and then she comes bursting into the room of their house. So it was a really weird juxtaposition, but that was life on the front lines then, Jim.
You know, I want to share this with our audience. Dave Rust is really known for collecting artifacts from the battlefields wherever he goes. And Dave, you're there with us. Talk to your wife, and she said she'd like you to leave some of that stuff there to put it back instead of bringing it back home with you. What did you bring?
Well, I actually hesitated bringing stuff because I got the stuff out of the country once, and I didn't really want to bring it back with me. And I don't think the International Desk wanted me to bring a lot of excess baggage back with me anyway. But for some of the backstory stuff we're doing, I did bring a couple things that we used today in some stories we were doing, but I could show you a couple. First of all, here was, I think you and I were in the car going down Sniper Alley, and this is the window from the driver's side of our first Land Rover we had here called Smokey. And this is a shot from an AK-47 that impacted just about driver's head high. When they changed the window out, I made sure we got it to take back with us, because eventually I hope we have a CNN museum to put it in. These signs were all over the city, but this was, you want to hold one down here? No, this was one of the signs that was in the main Sniper Alley area, and I didn't take it down until after the conflict because I didn't want to put anybody in danger, but I did take this back with me. This has actually been in the museum in Washington, D.C., and now it's back with us, and hopefully again in the CNN Museum eventually.
What it says here, just to explain, Parsi sniper, attention, sniper. There are a lot of these in the city because there were so many snipers.
That's right, that's right.
Dave is our walking collector of artifacts, and as he says, he one day hopes it will go in a museum, and he has a trove of material. And what it does is really highlight some of what was going on back then. You've got one more thing here, Dave.
Yeah, this is an Olympic number that was used in the Olympics in '84. I found it in a pile of mud in one of the areas, Grbavica, that was being ethnically cleansed, and this was just tossed out of the house and thrown out. I picked it up, had it cleaned, brought it back home with the anticipation of eventually finding the owner and giving it back to him. So
that's a history being taken care of there, being looked after, cast away in a pile of dirt, and that's one thing we're still trying to do. If we can locate, we believe, a female skier who once wore that in the Winter Olympics in '84, Jim.
You know, those things, the artifacts look interesting now, but this was one dangerous conflict to cover. I remember a New York Times correspondent telling me that it was much more dangerous than the Lebanese Civil War. What made it so dangerous, Nick, and what did it mean for journalists?
Well, Dave was just reminding me of some of the figures that you collected from the UN today. You know, at the worst days of the shelling, there were more than 3,700 shells fired onto Sarajevo on one particular day in the summer of 1993. Other days, there were an average of over 300 shells a day in the city. The road that we can see from where we're standing outside the hotel, in fact, rewind that clock to 92, 95. This door where we're standing, you couldn't come out of. It was snipers were operating, could shoot into this area. So you didn't use the front door of the hotel. It was too dangerous. So to get to people, it was hard to get around. We eventually began using armored cars in the city. They use a lot of gas. The city didn't have any gas that we could buy. You had to drive through two sets of front lines sometimes to go to areas outside of the city where you could buy gasoline for the cars. So all sorts of logistic issues, communications, no cell phones, satellite telephones. zones were just huge and cumbersome. And then, of course, all the dangers. Anytime you walk down the street here in Sarajevo, the possibility a mortar could land. The marketplace mortaring here in the city, 95, more than 60 people were killed. The hospitals here would go and see them injured being brought in there every day. Even the hospitals were targeted, running out of medical supplies. So it was a very, very, very tough time for everyone here. We were lucky that we could leave and come back. I was talking to some journalists who lived through it all today. For them right now, they don't look back at the war. They move on with their lives, and that's what a lot of people are doing here now, Jim.
Well, Nic, you actually used to jog. You used to run there. I mean, what were you thinking?
The short answer to that, Jim, is quite possibly the analysis may be that I wasn't thinking. I used to jog up and down the staircase in the Holiday Inn, and I thought, okay, and then I got bored with that. And as I said, to get into the hotel here, you had to drive in really fast with the car because the snipers on the hill opposite could see it. So I would jog from the back of the hotel, sprint across to a line of apartments, and then run along the back roads out of the sight of snipers. And then when I came back, I used to save a big sprint to get across that open ground. And then, of course, one day a lady walking in that area got shot, and I thought, okay, that's the end of that. So I would drive the armored car to the back road and then run in the relative safety of the back road. But 20 years later, Jim, embarrassed to have to talk about it, not sure that I would do it again today, but glad I did it at the time.
Well, it's good. It shows you're learning still, and that's good, Nic. But Dave Rust, for the camera people, this was one of the most dangerous conflicts of all. So dangerous that there was a video pool. It was decided not to have the networks, the news agencies compete with one another.
What we were discovering is that when we went to a market massacre or go to a hospital, it put all the crews in danger at the same time. So if they're all rushing to the same location and a shell came in, it could cause significant damage among the press corps. So we thought, well, what if we were to send one to the airport to get a reaction, one to the hospital to get a statement or to get some pictures, one down to the market where the massacres were being taken place, and then everybody share that footage. It would save a lot of lives. And I think it did. I mean, in the war in Bosnia, I think in 46 months, they lost about 66 journalists.
I remember one period of, I think, 14 days, 12 journalists were either killed or wounded in the period of less than 2 weeks. Some of them before they even could get from the airport into the city.
Right.
It was dangerous.
Yeah, and so that was one of the big measures that we took here on the ground, and I think it ended up saving a lot of people.